Alright, so this is an idea that just kind of came to me on impulse to do, and Ed and Eddy, it's my favorite show, and I'm almost kind of the Ed and Eddy guy around here, but despite that, I feel like I surprisingly neglect it a lot of the times, despite having like a lot of thoughts on it and stuff, and not watching it for a while, but I'm here now, and I'm gonna talk about what I think is my least favorite episode. And because of that, I'm probably inevitably going to talk about what my favorite is. But since just ending on a positive note is nicer and just being positive in general is a lot more cool and fun, I'm going to do this first, so then, yeah, I can do the episode I like a lot more afterwards. And I'm going to tell you now what I think is the worst episode of Ed and Eddy. Now, before I get into it specifically, I will say I don't think Ed and Eddy overall has like any episodes where it's like, holy fucking shit, gouge my eyes out, this is horrible. But this one comes to the closest to it. And no, it's not If It Smells Like an Ed. I don't know why, but I remember back during like the mid-2010s or so, people really hated this episode and thought it was like the worst of the worst. I'm assuming it's just because it like annoyed them when they were like 6 or 7 years old or whatever, because they just generally didn't like Jimmy for being a crybaby or whatever, and it was probably they also hated Sarah and Kevin because they didn't get why they're funny at the time or why they behave the way they do. And I'm also just assuming people thought it'd be the easiest episode for fucking like Mr. Enter or whoever to use all of their buzzwords on and make some absurd complaints like Edtropolis has no references to 9/11 in it or whatever, something fucking stupid like that. But we're a bit better than here. Over here we can actually think about it and not be in a hive mind and actually assess it, because I don't think that episode is that bad at all. My only issue with it is just Jimmy going after Double D and Ed 2, even though they didn't really do anything, it was just Eddy. But I mean, that's kind of almost like typical shit for the whole series, where like, just because they're in a group, they always all happen to get in the same fucking mishap. But yeah, aside from that, I think there's nothing wrong with it. It has a lot of memorable stuff, like, the Friends song with the "you stub your toe and it hurts, and those jubes will rot your teeth, dude, and the fake cow quacking. And yeah, I guess them also finding Johnny was kind of a funny scene, how he chases after them with the rest of the kids still like tied up. But yeah, aside from that, I don't think there's anything wrong with that episode aside from that. So yeah, just people being fucking stupid, I'll say it like that. People also seem to dislike the school episodes, as we'll call them, and I don't really fault them for that either. It is kind of like a drop point for the series. Now, unlike with, say, SpongeBob or Simpsons, where I'm like, no, I draw the line here, I stop watching at this season, I ignore everything afterwards, I don't quite feel that with Ed and Eddy. The show I say that I feel that the strongest for, that's not really brought up too often, is actually Dexter's Lab, because with SpongeBob and Simpsons, I'm like, nope, by that point it just gradually got worse and worse. I stopped at season 3 and 8. Dexter's Lab, I'm very strictly like, no, there were only 2 seasons, nothing else after that exists. I fucking hate the revival episodes so much. But yeah, Ed and Eddy with the school episodes, like, the ones that take place after summer and in a meta sense when they want to stop the series originally, I don't think they're that bad. I'm in the ballpark of like, yeah, definitely watch the episodes that take place in summer, and if you really liked what you saw, then I guess you can see these for some extra. But despite that, the episode that I think is the worst does take place in this, because it did have some of its problems. Like, for once, it wasn't quite the same feel, but that's like the smallest issue. The other issue is that I feel like the characters, they start to get flanderized. I know that's kind of like a typical term, but it's the best one I can use, and I think I said it weirdly, but that and just like also a bit off character. I'll explain it more as I complain about the episode, but at times it feels like an alien or an AI that's not even that good of an AI tried writing and replicating the characters that we know, but failed. Again, not as bad as some other shows that go on for too long, but it was definitely felt here. Or, you know, it kind of feels like somebody who doesn't usually write the show, or a company that doesn't own it took it and started making the characters in their vision of what they think they are. That might be another big hint of what episode I like the least if you know you're at an Eddy trivia. But yeah, basically at times I kind of feel like that they would make the characters too stupid, or be into something that they're not that into, or fucking exaggerate one of their obsessions. And one is especially exaggerating them being, like, aggressive or angry all the time, like Eddy getting really mad, like the TV episode, I feel like had this issue where he's like, "You bunch of losers," and, you know, that just felt like a bit too far to me, and yeah, that's an example of something I see in this episode that I'm finally going to talk about too, where even the voice acting just sounds off because they have to exaggerate them due to poor writing. Okay, finally, now that I've set up everything, the episode of Ed and Eddy that I think is the worst is Smile for the Ed. Now, I will say, even though I just criticize people who think that if it smells like an Ed is the worst for being cliche afterwards and being a hive mind, I will say it might be a bit easier for me to pick out and bully this one, because for whatever reason, as far as I last checked this years ago, this is the only episode, for whatever reason, is done by a different writer. I'm pretty sure the usual writer is just Danny Antonui, but this one, for whatever reason, is the only episode to be done by somebody else, and they fucked up because I never liked this episode, and when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's probably why. But yeah, the plot, this is the one where Eddy wants to take a good school photo, because if he does that, then his parents will let him move into his big brother's old room. So he tries doing that, but Kevin fucks it up. And that's my first issue with it, is that this seems really fucking off character for Kevin, and the whole entire scenario is just weird too. Because Eddy's there, getting ready for his picture and posing for it in front of the camera, and you actually see the adult's hand about to take it. But then Kevin just pops in and goes like, "Dork," and supposedly punched him or something and mess up the photo. And first of all, it's fucking weird to have the adult there, not just because it's Ed and Eddy, but just because they weren't like, "Hey, kid with the red hat, why the fuck are you in the photo frame? Why are you hitting that student? Don't do that. Holy shit, we need to call the principal and then retake this." None of that. Even though they made the adult exist. Again, I feel like the person making this just did not really understand the series that much. But I also think this is off character for Kevin too, just because that's way too fucking far to him being an asshole. Kevin, like, on his own, actually is not really an asshole. It was always provoked. Like, whenever he wants to attack them, it's because they did something. And otherwise, he would just generally be, like, you know, verbally, like, a bit aggressive or dismissive or cold or a bit bullying about that, just calling them dorks. Like, that's the worst he would do if there's, like, nothing that was, like, happening, and you can't really blame him considering that they openly try to scam and take his money away. So yeah, and like otherwise it was also mainly towards like Eddy too, where he would just be kind of cold towards them. Like, I mean, there was that one scene before where like Double D was by himself and he was like being nice to him, and then he just ignores Ed. But yeah, again, off character, Kevin would most likely not just fucking attack them for no reason. That's what makes him and Sarah work once you're like past the age of the angry 6-year-old watching. It's like, oh, they're actually funny, and they only ever fucking get mad at their Ed boyfriends because they're fucking assholes too. But yeah, that's my first issue. My other one, this is gonna be a weird one, but it's Ed making a fake key for Eddy out of potato salad, as he calls it. The way he says it's like really excited, as if it's butter toaster gravy. Like, potato salad! I know this sounds really nitpicky, but it's a bigger deal when you like the show as much as I do, and like you really like and know the characters. And again, off-character moment, they treat it as if it's like an obsession equal to butter toast or gravy. And yes, I do hear what the fuck I'm saying, but that's just how it goes. But yeah, that's just another stupid random thing. It just feels like some random obsession they would give Patrick in like season 6 of SpongeBob or some shit, because they don't actually know the character. It's just like a fucking like alien or bad AI idea of the character. And yeah, like another point where like the voice acting is noticeable, because like again, I don't blame them. Like they didn't write the script, but they just have to like obey it and make the character sound wrong because of it. Obsession. So yeah, that's my other issue with it, and as you can tell, I'm struggling to think of stuff just because overall this episode's really fucking forgettable, and unlike with like probably any other episode, I can't think of any moment that's remotely funny in this episode. It's an Ed and Eddy episode that's not at all funny, can you believe it? So yeah, basically we have an out of character moment from Kevin, and like more towards the beginning, too many adults on screen, and then an off-character moment from Ed towards the end, and a whole lot of nothing in between it and on the edges. And that's why I think it's the worst episode. Yes, this isn't me like screaming and going on a big rant, because like I said, I just think this is simply the worst episode. That's it. Like I said in the beginning, I don't think there's any episode of this series that was that fucking bad, so yeah, that's about it. Me just recalling why I hated this episode and why it stands out for bad reasons. But after that, I might be able to more passionately talk about my favorite episode of this series, at least what I think is my favorite. So I'll see you all whenever I do that. Take care.